OS2 today.
Okay.
Okay.
Take off.
Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 308th meeting since we started in February of 2009. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require our speaker to take a position on an issue, express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. Give the speaker an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, we remind the interrupter we listen only one fool at a time. Then we have question and answers of the speaker from the audience. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in this audience that wants it is 5 minutes at the podium to respond to the speaker said before, for, or against. And our speaker gets the last word, gets a comment, and a comment, and close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we put on our speaker, now is the time for announcements. Does anybody have announcements? Any announcements? Now you want to make an announcement, now's the time. If anybody has any announcements? No announcements? I can't believe it. Well, next week, March 19th, on supporting local police and keeping them independent, Randy Neef, citizen advocate, will be our speaker. It's on your itinerary. I won't read all this. On March 26th, public officials and freedom of religion with Professor Raymond Kessler, Department of Criminal Justice, Saul Ross University. They'll discuss reviews of clerks, banks, officials, freedom of religion. It's on the itinerary also. I won't read all this. On April 9th, should the Texas Governor Abbott be impeached? That's on the itinerary also. And Dr. Stephen Butler, Professor of History, will argue this he'll be our speaker. And on April 16th, solutions to many of the challenges facing America. That's Calvin Bluet. That's also on the itinerary. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Jian Li, author, anthropologist, and Mandarin teacher. She's going to discuss how we can choose to participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world. Joseph Campbell, Reflections of the Art of Living. Her focus is not on how to solve social problems facing us, but rather on how we can choose to live a healthier and more joyful life. By rejecting any extreme views and practices, she advocates leading a life of balance in one, physical health, striving for balance and harmony, wisdom from Daoism, Taoism, and TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, psychological well-being, cultivating social relationships, wisdom from Confucianism, spiritual life, nurturing the divine spark in us, wisdom from Buddhism. Jen concludes that exploring the alternative views of a living, healthy family life is very beneficial to most people. She also authored a reading manual with some pictures in color that can be reprinted on demand. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Dr. Jian Li.
Good evening. First, I want to thank Tom for inviting me to come here and talk, and also help me to shape my talk in such a way that will fit well with this audience. When he invited me to give a talk here, I said my talk doesn't really fit the format for this College of Complexes because I don't really want to argue against anything. So I set up a straw man first. So my title is Leading a Passionate or Balanced Life. I'm not really against leading a passionate life, but I'm against leading any extreme ideas and practices. Let me first do a survey and ask you, if given a choice, would you prefer to lead a passionate life? How many of you would prefer to live a passionate life? Wow, more than half. How about a balanced life? Another half. How about practice extreme fundamentalist way of believing and practices? No one.
They're liars.
So I'm safe. I'm
But
safe
there are some of us like me that are extreme on the other side.
on the other side. I think I'm pretty safe here in saying that I am for leading a balanced life with sprinkles of passion, and I'm against the extreme views and practices, and that's my for and against to begin with. And I think I won't offend anyone by saying prefer a balanced life and sprinkle with some passions along the way, and I'm against any too extreme fundamentalist views in politics or in personal life. So that if I have something I have to be against, that's my topic. I'm for a balanced life sprinkled with some passion. In this cultural complexes and looking around the world, there are a lot of things, a lot of social challenges facing us. Every time we talk about social problems, and it's overwhelming. So my topic is not to solve the social problems, but rather to see how we can live a more joyful life. As the introduction by Tom, from Joseph Campbell's book, Reflections on the Art of Living, that I really like. He said, we participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world. We cannot cure the world of sorrows, but we can choose to live in joy. When we talk about settling the world's problems, we are backing up the wrong tree. The world is perfect. It is a mess. It has always been a mess. We are not going to change it. Our job is to straighten our own lives. That's kind of extreme. We still want to solve problems, social problems, but it's more realistic, I argue, that we can change, we can straighten our own lives than to straighten social problems. It's overwhelming. We can try in some ways to solve social problems, but we have to look deeply in ourselves and see how we can choose to live a balanced life and choose to live in joy before we try to solve the social problems. Since I was from China and I'm an anthropologist, and I just gave some talks in a book club at First Unitarian Church on Confucianism, Daoism, and Buddhism. I tried to put things together for this talk. This introduction of Chinese religion and philosophy can last for a whole semester, 3 months. I'm going to finish less than an hour. So bear with me and see how much I can cover. You probably have heard about Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. And in the West, these three philosophical religious traditions are also usually classified as religions. The three religions from China, Chinese religions. But in the Chinese tradition, they are usually called three schools of thought. They are not considered as religions. They are considered three teachings or three schools of thought. I want to talk about how the understanding of these three schools of thought can help us to live a more balanced life. First, I'm going to talk about Daoism, and I'll give a very brief overview of these three schools of thought. In the Chinese tradition, the three schools of thought, they are not mutually exclusive. they're complementary to each other. So a person, a well-rounded person, should be both a Confucianist, Taoist, and a Buddhist, 3 in 1. Some religions, it's more exclusive. You can only be one, you cannot be the other. But in Chinese tradition, a well-rounded scholar should be knowledgeable and can practice all the 3 at the same time. How can we practice all 3 at the same time? We practice them in the same time because we see they teach different things. They have different focuses. Confucianism, the philosophy and the ethics is more focused on human relationship. How you should deal with your family members, your superiors, and all kinds of proper social relationship. And Daoism is more of teaches the relationship between human and the nature. How we can live a life that is in line with the natural law. So it's nature and human life. And the Buddhism, of course, it was originally from India. And the Buddhism is more of, in a sense, it's more like a religion. It focuses on how you can transcend your mind, limitation of mind, and how you can explain things like why bad things happen to good people, why suffering exists, how can we go beyond suffering. So each of these schools of thought, of philosophy and religion, they focuses on a different level of human existence. The oldest indigenous religion, I call philosophy, in the Chinese tradition is Daoism. For each topic, I'm going to introduce a little bit theory and then kind of give some examples. So first, Daoism. I like to introduce 2 concepts, maybe 3 concepts in Daoism. The Daoism, this is the symbol of Daoism. A Chinese artist did this calligraphy for me. And when you see this Taoist symbol, what do you see in this symbol? What do you see in this symbol? Yin and yang, right? Okay, yin and yang. So the basic Taoist philosophy is yin and yang constitutes Tao. But it's more than just yin and yang. In the dark half is yin or yang. The dark is yin and the white is yang. And within the dark circle there is a white. And within the white circle there is a dark. And traditionally we say the male is yang. Male is yang. But within male there is the female element. Right? Within male there's female. And within the yin there is this yang. So we are all have both male and a female power in us. And not only that we all have, it's the relative focus of each. And not only that we have yin and yang with us, it's also dynamic. Dynamic in the sense that it changes. It changes, for example, the sun rises. When the sun rises, it is yin or yang. A quick quiz. When the sun rises from the east, is a yang or yin element? It's a yang element. The sun rises, it's a yang. But when the sun sets, it's yin. But every day the sun would rise and would fall. So it's dynamic, right? It's dynamic. And even like man or woman has estrogen and testosterone, and that kind of level of estrogen and testosterone also change at different times of our life cycle, right? So this yin and the yang, it is dynamic and changes. In terms of health and to live according to the law of nature, is that we recognize that we all have yin and the yang in us, and they are not always in perfect harmony. But we want to strive to the harmony. So if I go to a Chinese traditional doctor, and he or she would look at my tongue, feel my pulse, and he would quickly say, like, today, this time, you have too much yin but not enough yang. You have too much yang and not enough yin. So his medicine, herb medicine or acupuncture, will try to restore the balance of yin and yang. When your balance of yin and yang is restored, you'll be in a better health. For example, some people are very likely to get allergies or get a cold. We all have the same environment, or more or less same environment. But some people get allergies and some other people don't get allergies. Even if we eat the same food, even if we are under more or less same stress, but our body's response to the external stresses is different. Why? According to the Chinese medicine, it's because of your balance of the internal qi. So that's the other concept you probably have heard. First, we have yin and yang, and the balance of yin and yang is the essence of Tao. And then what is the power to prepare the balance? The power to prepare the balance is the qi, is the energy. And some people might have more yin energy, yin qi. Some people might have more yang qi. And I have asked a Chinese doctor, is that yin and yang balance and qi in your body is something that you're born with, or something that you have developed over time? And he said it's both. It's both. So some people may be born with more yin, more with yang. It can be man or woman. And also the way your diet, the way your life goes, it can interact. So the Chinese medicine, the theory of Chinese medicine is we should strive to live a balanced life, a balanced diet. By having a balanced diet and balanced life, then you're more likely to have a balance yin and yang. And once you have a more balanced yin and yang, you will be in a better health situation, right? Health status. I'll give you 2 examples of how I try to live a life that's conform to the balance of this philosophy. One example is the type of food. According to the Taoist theory and now our environmental awareness, we should eat according to the seasonal food, local food. They have more vitality. For example, I will not eat watermelon after it's September. I eat watermelon only when it's seasonal. That's like in summer, right? So from June to September, it's kind of natural cycle of watermelon. And the watermelon has a yin property, which means cooler property. It's not that it's because in the refrigerator it's cool, but it's because the food itself has a cooler property. Because in summer there's a lot of heat, and you need to eat food that has cooler property, such as watermelon, such as cucumber. Most Chinese know instinctively which food has the property that's either cold property, or hot property, or neutral. So watermelon has cooling property in itself, even when it's not from the refrigerator. So seasonal, if you can, eat seasonal food and not out of season. And also sleeping pattern. It's better to sleep when the sun sets and get up when the sun rises. Of course, we don't have this luxury now to be able to sleep when the sun sets. But in general, for example, I would want to sleep like about 10 o'clock in the evening and get up 5 o'clock in the evening, as close to the natural rhythm as possible. I was talking with a colleague, a friend recently, and she said there's another theory that supports this, is that we have, a lot of us, probably not everyone, but a lot of us still have a farmer's gene. The farmer's gene that means thousands years ago, 10,000 years ago, or even longer, that our ancestors were all farmers. We didn't have electricity. So you would naturally go to bed when it's dark. You would naturally get up when the sun rises. So the quality of sleep, if you can sleep early and get up early, that probably will give you more energy than if you try to sleep like 1 or 2 a.m. and get up like 10 or 11. It's just not conforming to the natural way of living. I think most of you would agree, we are evolutionary process. By evolutionary process, it means our ancestors' way of living still have an impact on how our body responds to the natural rhythms. So with the Taoism is understanding how we can live and understand the nature's way of dynamic yin and yang pattern, and try to live our lives accordingly, conforming to the nature's rhythm. Of course, Daoism also has other impact, such as art, in Chinese art. But I don't have time, and I'm not qualified to talk about Daoism and art. In our book club, I have invited a guest speaker who is a professor and an artist to talk about that topic. Just say that the Chinese traditional art is influenced by the Daoism, especially the landscape painting. The last thing I want to talk about this Daoism is this character. So Chinese is the only language that, at least only major language that's not phonetic. It is, sometimes we call it logographic. It's like a logo, or ideographic, like ideas and a picture. So this is a character for Dao. And this character for Dao has 2 parts. One is this part. This part means head. And this part is like a leg walking. Well, it's like a leg walking. So the Dao in itself means the way that you should go, the way that the universe is. So this is an interesting character of Dao. So now I'll move to the second philosophical tradition, Confucianism. Confucianism is not really a religion in the sense that it focuses on proper social relationship. the classical work of Confucius is, in Chinese is called 论语, in English is the Analects. And one of the conversations in the Analects goes like this. When one of the students asked him about God, what our lives will be after life. And he said, we don't know enough about this world. And how do we know about the other world? So he said, we should keep God and spirits in respectful distance. We be respectful, but we don't really know about this. It's better to focus on what we know, and there's a lot that we need to know about in this life. So in this sense, it's not a religion in the sense that usually when we talk about religion, we talk about the before life, afterlife, God, something that our eyes cannot see. And Confucius, his focus is more of this life, this world, and what we should do in this world. The time when he was born, in his time, is about 2,500 years ago, and there was a lot of wars in China. It's called warring state. And looking at the warring state, a lot of wars, conflicts in his time, he thought the root of the problem is people don't practice and don't say things properly. And he emphasizes a lot about relationships, rituals. In terms of relationships, in his system, he feels that if everyone fulfills his or her role properly as a father, father takes father's responsibility, and children listen to parents. The superiors should be superiors, the authority should live by example, so that people will have respect for them, and people who are subordinate should follow the example of a wise leader. So in an ideal world, if everyone fulfills his or her role, then the society will not be in conflict. But we know our world is not ideal. Sometimes leaders don't do the things that they are supposed to do. Things can get messy. The Confucianism in the Chinese history has been a stabilizing forces for the country, but it has been under attack for a long time. Now I'm thinking, should I go through the kind of cultural history aspect of how to apply to our life? And that's a harder topic. I can talk about Daoism and how to apply to our life easier than Confucianism, because Confucianism is a very rule-bound philosophy. And I know a lot of us don't like to have rules and don't like to have constraints, don't like to be told what you are supposed to do. So let me go off a little bit and say throughout the history why Confucianism was important in the Chinese society. It is important for two reasons. One is that throughout the imperial China for 2,000 years, there have been an imperial examination. Civil service servants were chosen by the tests, by the civil service tests. They had to score very high to pass the examination and to be selected as like we say civil service, like we still have some kind of civil service examinations too, right? But it's a little bit different. So the kind of civil service examinations in China was mostly based on Confucianism. Because it's based on Confucianism and because the leaders were chosen after they passed the examination, they serve as a very stabilizing forces for the country, where even the rulers can go, but the system still remains. For example, one of the dynasties were the Mongolian Genghis Khan conquered half of the world, and Genghis Khan conquered China, and his grandson became a Chinese emperor. Kublai Khan became Chinese emperor, even though he was considered as a barbarian, but he became civilized with Confucian teachings, and he also used Confucian philosophy and the kind of imperial examination to govern the country. So it had been a stabilizing force for the Chinese society. Later on, after 1800s, after China was defeated by the Opium Wars, there are 2 or 3 Opium Wars, and each time China was defeated by the British. And after that, Chinese started to examine their own system, and they started to question the validity of how viable the Confucian system was. So from 1800s and during Mao's revolution, when Mao's communist forces defeated nationalist forces, Confucianism was also attacked. When you want to have a revolution, when you want to start something new and different, you don't want to have an old system that tells you what the proper behavior is. But now, revolution was over in China. The current president, of course, doesn't want to have any revolutions. He wants stability. He wants people to work hard to make money, right? So Confucianism becomes a welcome ideology, and it's now becoming kind of promoted in China. So that's a kind of historical view of Confucianism. As far as applying to our daily lives, I see the value of Confucianism in the sense that it focuses on human relationship and focuses on being a role model for your children. Role model, if you are a boss, you should be a role model for your employees, and then they will respect you. And we know how important that social relationship, family relationship is. The roles may change, things may change, but all the recent researches and data show that we live a better life, a more fulfilling life, when we have a good network of social support, which includes your family and friends. So in that sense, that by cultivating the relationship, by becoming a role model, by having a support system, in human relationship is good for us. The philosophy way back 2,500 years ago, some of those philosophy may be out of date, but the focus on this life, focus on human relationship, focus on what we can do to have a more harmonious relationship. The basic philosophy is something that still has some value today. The last aspect, the last school, number 3 school that I'm going to talk about is the spiritual life. The spiritual life in the sense of Buddhism. Buddhism was introduced from India to China almost 2,000 years ago. The Buddhism is actually very sophisticated and complex. I will choose 2 concepts from Buddhism to talk about how it might inspire us to live a more balanced, fulfilled life. One concept is the concept of impermanence. Impermanence, things that change, things don't stay same. And don't try to cling to things that are not sustainable. You should let it go. If you don't let it go, you suffer. You should know the wisdom of when to let it go. If there's one thing, according to Buddhism and Taoism and many other schools of philosophy, that there are very few absolute truths in this world. One of the few only truths in this world is that things change. The only thing that's permanent is that the principle of change. So since things will change, that means nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. Our lives are not permanent. The light is not permanent. Your table is not permanent. Your children are not same as they were young or when they're older. So the things are changing all the time. So the impermanence that illustrates that kind of way that whether it's the material thing, our body, or psychology, nothing is permanent. So you have to realize, have the awareness of letting go things that don't really belong to you in a philosophical sense. And the second concept is the concept of karma. The concept of karma. Karma says that we come to this world not as a blank slate. We come to this world with information already imprinted. For a real, I guess, a Buddhist, they have more stronger belief in that many religions will try to answer this question. There are a lot of sufferings in the world. There's a lot of sufferings in our lives, and why bad things happen to good people. Why I get sick, why a tornado, lightning hit the house, hit this particular house. There are a lot of kind of speculations. Every religion has its own way of explaining why bad things happen to good people. So in Buddhism, the theory is that we have karma. even if you live a very good life, this life, you did everything right, who knows what you did to your previous life? So I'm not saying like I believe this, okay? So I'm just saying that's a theory. It's a very, I would say it's a very cogent and consistent theory that explains if you're in the system, you might see it makes sense. If you're not in the system, it doesn't make sense. But according to this theory is that bad things happen to good people, even though this life you did everything right. The previous life, you probably didn't do everything right, so you have bad karma accumulated from your previous life. So what should you do about this? It's not that you can't do anything about it this life. You have another life. You have endless lives going forward. So if you do everything right in this life, you accumulate good karma, and the next life and the life next, you will enjoy all peace and joy. So you still can do things that improve your this life and even life beyond. So I find these two concepts, impermanence and the karma, give you a different perspective about life in general. But what is, I think, is more pertinent is that in Buddhism, it also believes that the divinity is not outside of yourself, but it's within. So each of us has a spark of divinity in us, and you can cultivate the divinity in you and become more Buddha-like. Buddha is not exactly a god. A Buddha is an enlightened being. So we all have the potential to become a Buddha by being enlightened, enlightened being. And how can we become an enlightened being? If you are practicing Buddhist, you do meditation. If the God is not outside you, but is inside you, you have to look inside yourself. How can we look inside ourselves? Only when you are very quiet. If you can quiet your mind and can look deeply into yourself and doing meditation, you might see a more divine spark that can manifest. And you can nurture that divine spark and become more spiritual. When you become more spiritual, you will not be bothered too much by all the bad news out there, but you know what's inside you, what you can do to choose to live joyfully in the sorrows of the world. So these are the three philosophical or religious views of life. I think if we are conscious and aware of their values, we might be able to incorporate some of these in our daily lives so we can live a more balanced life. It sounds easy, but it's really not that easy to practice. I feel like every day I still feel frustrated, I feel like pulled this way or that way, but at least I'm aware there are ways that I can improve myself by drawing wisdom from different traditions. I like to end my talk by a quotation from Daoism. Daoism is the classical work of Taoism by the author called Lao Tzu. And my favorite quotation from the book says, "The ideal person is honest, without being rude, principled without being harsh, straightforward without being arrogant, brilliant without being dazzling. And that's the goal that I want to achieve. And it's a long way to achieve that goal. Of all the three religions or philosophical traditions, my favorite is Daoism. And since I'm bilingual in English and Chinese, I've been translating Dao De Jing. In fact, Dao De Jing already has more than hundreds of translations. Each one touches a different, gets a different insight from it. So I like to try my understanding and my translation of Dao De Jing. By translating Dao De Jing, I get some insight from this ancient wisdom. So now I'm ready to take your questions.
Tom, I want to change the battery.
I'm going to take an example from history that I think is related to a current life, but I'm going to use the example from history so as not to start a big fight in the room. What do you do if you're living in Germany in the 1930s and you see what's happening with the extreme hatred against Jews and gays and gypsies and this incitement to violence and so on? If you simply go within yourself and live a balanced life, aren't you in fact giving in to that evil and allowing it to take over your country?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. There are different people have different strategies and different reactions in difficult situations. Whether it's in a Chinese situation or in American situation, you see during the Vietnam War, there are people who escaped to Canada, for example. There are people who protested, the people who joined the war. So you have a lot of varieties of responses. So the Chinese tradition, as far as I know, if you're a true Taoist, when things get really tough, they become hermits. They would go into a mountain and be a hermit. So from that perspective, like when things are so bad, it's not likely that you can change the system and you go to a mountain and become a hermit. At least you preserve your own life. That's one response. And the other response, like a more Confucianism approach would be, more than one solutions. Let me say 2 scenarios. So one of the Confucian solution will be to uphold what you think is right, even if it costs your life. And they were Confucian scholars and bureaucrats who sacrificed their lives for what is right. And there are also Confucianists who cater to whoever is in power and become another bureaucrat in whatever is in power. And sometimes some people think it's better to work in the system to change the system.
So the other part of this then is, if I live in Nazi Germany and I go live the life of a hermit and do nothing to oppose that horrid evil, aren't I in fact building up bad karma for my next life?
Well, now you're talking about Buddhism. I was talking about the Taoist. The Taoists don't talk about karma. So the Taoist talks more about preservation of life. Preservation of life is the most fundamental. And one of the stories in the Taoist is a tree. You would rather to be a useless tree than a useful tree. A useless tree can grow and grow for hundreds of years. A useful tree will be cut and made into furniture. So, if you want to preserve your life, just be a useless tree, just a blade of grass so you can live. And I think the thing is that there are so many choices and different choices and challenges. People would choose a different way of path that fits their own philosophy. So that's my Taoist. If you say the karma in terms of karma, I don't know. I don't really know how to answer. It's better to fight and to accumulate good karma, or if it's to escape. I think a lot of Buddhists actually, they are not pacifists under any circumstances. Buddhists will fight when their lives and the people around them, their lives get threatened. They would fight and sacrifice their lives, and they would take arms too.
So I think what I'm asking is, within these philosophies, where is the obligation to oppose evil, or is there not one?
In Taoists, probably not one. But in Buddhism and Confucianism, yes, there is. In Taoists, it's a very transcendental philosophy in the sense that a true Taoist doesn't judge. If you have beauty, you have ugliness. Without ugliness, you don't know the beauty. So it's just part of life. You accept what it is part of life. So a true Taoist probably don't judge, don't fight the evil. They become hermits when things get tough. But Confucianism and Buddhism, especially Confucianism, they have very strong ethics of what is right and what is wrong. In the political sense, there is a theory of mandate of heaven. The mandate of heaven says that when the emperor is not performing according to the best interests of the people, he loses the mandate of heaven. So you can say it's kind of like evil, but they don't use the language of evil. So when the emperor loses the mandate of heaven, people have a right to overthrow that emperor, overthrow that government, and start a new one. So that's why there are a lot of dynasties change. And everyone claims that they have mandate of heaven. And by claiming having a mandate of heaven, they claim a higher moral ground.
Which they may or may not have.
They may or may not have. That's right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, one sort of question will meld into another one. These theories or religions that you've mentioned seem to be more of an introspective nature, where you look inside yourself, sort of like rugged American individualism, so to speak. So how did this individualism, how did it match up against the communist system, which was more looking at the whole society and worrying about that? I mean, wasn't there a complete clash of cultures, and how is it resolved these days?
Well, actually, whether it's Confucianism or communism in terms of the culture, you probably also have heard there are two different values. One is individualism, one is collectivism. In terms of cultural differences, the United States is very rugged individualism, and China traditionally is very collectivism. So the Confucianism talks about human relationship and proper roles. It conforms that helps the harmony of the collectivism. Even communism is more of a collectivism than individualism. So one reason that it found a home in China because it's more, it conforms more of the collectivist view of the society. In that view, individual interest can be, and it's also desirable to be sacrificed for the benefit of the group, for the benefit of the society. So it is not really in conflict as far as that kind of collectivist mentality goes.
I lived a year in Germany, and I knew a family very well there. Their son was in the college I was in Illinois, and they were basically of kind of northern western Eastern German origin, and I thought were very principled people. During World War II, they didn't make big waves, but for 2 years they kept a Jewish family in their home, hidden under the stairwell, and of course risked their lives in doing this, but it saved the lives of that family. Now this is kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, the opposite of that, a sheep in wolf's clothing. People working within the system and yet still surviving. Would this be kind of like a Taoist, or I mean, would it be a combination of the two, or do they also think in those terms in China to combine these philosophies?
Combine
Being pacifist and activist.
being pacifist and
Being activist in a very intelligent way.
Yeah.
By doing what they had to survive in Germany, and at the same time opposing it secretly to save other people's lives.
Right. I guess when things go tough, we probably all have to have that kind of strategy. On the one hand, preservation of life is the most important. A lot of Chinese people, and I think people in general, would value preservation of life. If you don't have a life, you don't have anything to look forward to. But if you can preserve your life, you have something to look forward to and to change. Talk about the Germans and the persecution of Jews during the Second World War. I don't know if you're aware, there were a lot of Jews who fled from Europe, from Germany, went to China, and they were accepted in China. There was a time when they were rejected by the United States, and they were accepted by the Chinese in Shanghai. They still have Jewish synagogues in Shanghai in the 1930s. And Chinese have very high regard for Jewish people because they share some same cultural values as strong family tradition and a strong respect for tradition and education and family values.
People writing out of questions.
All of questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
Anybody have a question left? There we go.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I just want to clarify the notion of karma. Is it related to punishment or retribution for some evil that was done? Or can it be just bad luck or arbitrary destiny?
As far as I understand, the karma is not retribution, it's not from outside forces, it's all from inside. It's what you do. You accumulate karma, and you are responsible for your karma, and you can change your karma by doing good things in this life, then you will have good karma in the next life. So it has nothing to do with retribution, it's like you are responsible for your own action.
Yeah, which means that if you do bad things, then you have bad karma.
You just accumulate bad karma. Yeah, you just accumulate. But do you want to hear my view about karma?
Yes.
I try to explain it as it is, and without interjecting my own views. Everyone can have his own view, but I try to be objective as much as I can.
I was wondering, if you'd studied any of the Hermetic philosophies. They seem to me that they're similar to Taoism a lot, with the Kabbalion, if you've ever read that. Also, some thoughts on karma. I tend to think of it as the law of inertia, because an object that stays going in one direction is going to have a tough time trying to change direction if it's got inertia pushing it towards where it's headed.
I don't know how it can be related to the law of inertia, because the karma is active. It's constantly changing. You can change your karma at this very moment by choosing to do what you can reap in the future, by choosing to do by your action. It's not inertia. In terms of sociological consequences, there is kind of inertia. In terms of personal responsibility, it's more active. I think in terms of sociological consequences is that if people accept their lot, accept their situation, they don't protest. They don't go and try to change the system. They try to change themselves. But sometimes it's necessary to not only change yourself, but also change the society, to push the society towards more equitable, more justice. That's another question. If you say inertia in the sense of social consequences, it does have their elements. If you blame yourself, you are not going to protest. You are not going to change the society. But in terms of individual responsibility, it does. It's very active. You can always make choices to change, so you can change the trajectory of this life and the trajectory of next life. So I like to conclude by saying that a more balanced view of life consists both of inward balance and an inward cultivation and a participation of what is right for the society. I choose more of inward looking at the individual level partly because of the topic, and partly because I saw so many problems and so many debates in this forum that we become so overwhelmed by the other problems. So just to balance a little bit, we can look inside in ourselves and choose to participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world.
Donald Trump is the Republican karma coming from the roots.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. Who wants to be first? He's got to change that.
If he can figure out how to do it. Just let it run, I can't get it out of there.
You know, I want to make a point though.
Oh, yeah,
It's not a question, it's just a point.
Wait,
Oh, okay.
I don't know if he's ready yet. You ready?
Oh,
Yeah, I couldn't get that out, so
I
just
don't-
go
I
ahead.
don't either. I don't either.
Come on up. You got 5 minutes.
Oh, no, I really just 1 or 2 minutes. Well, my point is actually, I married a Caucasian, I would say my husband, just like any one of yours. So often he asks me a lot of questions about Chinese religion, Buddhist, Taoist, or Confucianism. So I have to study a little bit, but however, because I get my education in this country, so there's a lot of things today I heard Dr. Li. It's really enlightening to me, really. It's because even though it's from my culture, but I guess I didn't study enough. Or, particularly one thing that today she talked about about the Buddha. You know, when we go to China, go travel, and you see this big happy Buddha with big belly, you touch it and you got a good luck. This seems really foreign for the Christianity of the belief. And this, you know, this is a demagogue. This is you don't worship the actual figure. So sometimes my husband often asks me, so why is that? And how do you explain to me? I never really truly know. But today, Dr. Li says actually, it's not a God. It's you could work within yourself, thought things through, then you could become an enlightened being. Then this is Buddha. This is rich. Just sometimes when we watch a lot of movies, are you the one? The one what? Of what? The one enlightened. The one is just you figure out in life and death. So I feel like that's probably you come to a certain mentality or certain thinking mode that you figure suddenly there's a lot of things comes easy when you figure out the things. I think maybe when I go home tonight or this weekend, I'm going to explain to my husband better, you know, what is it of the Buddhist religion and that actually you just become enlightened being. So that's not in conflict, in my point of view, of Christianity's belief. Because when you in this kind of a study, and you always, actually everybody try to be figured out, you know, be enlightened, how to deal with people, things, difficulties, family problems, social problems, drug problems, all of this. But if I guess you reach a certain kind of enlightenment, then you feel happy and you figure out and accept things and work things through. So I feel like I'm enlightened a little bit tonight, so I can go home and talk to my husband about it. That's the point. Thank you very much.
Who's next? It's me next. I can't believe it. Come on. If anybody wants to speak, there's chairs up here.
Yes, there is a well-known theory that ignorance is bliss. The more you, and I think, and my wife actually is sort of concerned for my sanity half the time. She said, "Well, why do you why do you pine over these problems and concern yourself? You see, just relax and be happy. And there is some truth to this. And I think perhaps too much navel gazing and introspection really, because really, when you look at these various theories and these various religions, there's just mass confusion. Really, you end up being none the wiser when you look at the whole picture. At least that's the way it seems to me. And also, you see so many people working at cross purposes in life. Many of them are Machiavellian. They're stabbing each other in the back or smiling, to you while they're doing it. So to me, it's probably. I think my wife has a point. You just be simple and straightforward, and just sail along and try and be happy. Now, but the real point, reason why I am interested in finance and economics, because I think that really is the mainspring of civilization, really. And so it really is concerning to many people. What worries me most about America is this notion of people being ruggedly individual and not giving a damn about other people. That seems to be a prevalent theme. And as I've mentioned many times, I see people here being deeply religious but profoundly unchristian. They really do not have, as apparently China, where you really do care about collectively society in general. But I don't see it here. I see what we see is really a collapse of this society. It's collapsing because there is no social consciousness and conscience. And I think that's the mainspring of America's problem, really. There is no guaranteed social conscience. People are taught to be selfish, taught to be ruggedly individual, and of course it's a myth. Like many American ideas are myths. They're very self-serving. And of course it's the rich and the powerful that want you to be ruggedly individual, stand up for yourself, don't act collectively, while they run away with the spoils. So it's anyway. It was a very interesting talk, which I enjoyed very much. I think there is a lot of them. In fact, there is a theory that Christianity really emanates from the East. It's more from the Buddhists, because it really is so different from the religion that's practiced by the Jewish people. If you read the Old Testament, it's just totally different. So there's a theory that it didn't emanate from the Jewish people. It's really a religion from the East, which seems to make sense to me. It's more Buddhist than Confucius than it is Jewish religion, in fact. So, but anyway, I enjoyed it. I'll think about it, and I'll probably be still as confused as ever.
What I've found in my own life is I go through periods where I become more introspective and feel like I need to take care of business for myself. And then I go through other periods where I am just absolutely going to be out there on the barricades doing activism because of my deep belief in social justice and things of that nature. And I find that cyclical. And one of the things that you talked about was taking care of yourself before you can take care of others. And that, in my mind, that does not mean I have to become wealthy so that I can give people a lot of money or anything like that. It just means that I have to nurture myself in a spiritual way and take care of my basic needs so that I then have the psychic and emotional energy to do the things that I think I need to do. And and I've gone through different periods of my life where I was very active, and different periods of my life where I was more introspective. And I think I'm moving right now from a period of having been extremely active to one of being more introspective. And I don't know where that will lead, but that's what's happening. Now, one of the things that I think we have lost in this country is a sense of optimism that is not shackled by fear. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. One of the European countries, I don't remember which one, is having a debate right now about what the minimum stipend for any person or family will be, even if they do not work. And in the United States, there would be many people who would say, well, we don't want to do that, because if we do, they'll just sit on their asses and they won't do anything. You see, whereas I, as an optimist, believe that if you help meet people's basic needs, human beings have a deep craving for spirituality and for knowledge and for art and for beauty. And if they have their basic needs met, that gives them an opportunity to make their way in the world and do things which they have would not have otherwise been able to do. It doesn't motivate them to sit on their ass and watch television. It gives them an opportunity that they would not have otherwise had. And so I get very frustrated when I look at our political system, which seems to be based on this rugged individualism, where, you know, if you don't make enough money to pay for health care for your family, and you don't make enough money to buy proper food for your family, and you don't make enough money to live in a proper place, well, too bad, so sad. You can just live on the street until you die of starvation or get some nasty illness and die from that. And I'm very tired of this kind of pessimistic attitude, because I think what it does is it shows a lack of respect for human decency, and it shows a very negative attitude about the nature of human beings. I think human beings, when given the opportunity to be compassionate and warm and to do great things, will do them. And I'm just distressed at this idea that no, some people seem to think that there are people that are just simply so craven that what they're out to do is they're simply out to do nothing except suck on the taxpayer in order to survive. And I just think it's a terribly sad state of affairs for the people who believe that, because what it does is it says that they really have this terribly negative attitude about what the nature of humanity and human beings is. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that presentation. It was very illuminating, and I learned a lot of things that I didn't know about Chinese culture and those various belief systems. They're in total very different from what we've been brought up with, although some of the principles are certainly like many of ours. One thing we should always remember is that the winners write history. So most history is not fully correct. And one thing I've been learning over the last few years, is a little bit more about ancient Egypt, which I've mentioned before, but I'm going to mention it again because, like I've mentioned a dozen times, Hitler stated if you say something long enough and loud enough, the people begin to believe it. So in ancient Egypt, the goddess Ma'at would pronounce things, and they would become national laws in Egypt. Things such as, always speak the truth to everyone. That was a national law. and always treat everyone in a kindly manner. And because of that, that kingdom had extreme prosperity and peace for 5,000 years. 5,000 years, until the slow trickle of immigration from the Middle East brought in a group who decided they wanted it for themselves, and there was a revolution that traumatically ended those 5,000 years. We have in our teachings, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In the ancient Egyptian, probably from which that came, it is do unto others as they would have you do unto them, which to me is a far more spiritual concept, because you're looking at their needs and their wants, not judging it from yours. There's a lot to be said in looking back into history without just necessarily believing everything you read because some PhD teaches it in school. Now, John, I guess we would all have to very much agree that you have a lovely, intelligent wife, because we agree with her concerns about you. No, I'm kidding. But the former part of that statement is very true. In looking at this condition in ancient Egypt, I would have to say that those 5,000 years of practice of those principles in ancient Egypt, although we call them pagan because they had gods and goddesses, but maybe this is just divisions of levels of comprehension of spiritual qualities. Those were spiritual qualities that were taught as made manifest in the human experience. And their head honcho god was Ra, the sun, the source of light, light being the symbol of spiritual understanding. They had an organization back then called the Great White Brotherhood, white symbolizing white light, which is the full spectrum of all the colors of light, full spiritual understanding. So, like Jesus was asked by his disciples, why are you teaching those people in parables? Well, because they're first graders and you're sixth graders, essentially. It was the level upon which they could understand at the time. And I think history has a lot of this, and to judge everything from our own level of understanding rather than trying to understand other levels and judge things in that way, I think is a big mistake. And we're so easily misled because we get fixed in certain, particularly in emotional holdings on certain subjects and so forth. The greater portion of consciousness is in complete silence. My father and my grandfather used to say, well, I think I'll sleep on it. And they'd come the next morning, they'd have the answer to that problem. That's because in sleep, the emotions and the left brain thinking mechanism, which is an absolutely essential tool, but nothing more than a tool, they go to sleep. And then we can hear coming forward out of that great, vast, infinite reservoir of intelligence, the answer to that little problem. And the more that we learn to be quiet and to listen and to take the left brain, think it through, do the thinking through that is necessary, but then take time and get very quiet and move it out of the way, then the answers come from something far beyond our big ego, brilliant left brain thinking mechanism.
Are we running out of comment up here? I guess we are.
Well, I'd like to say
Oh, come on up here.
I'd like to respond to something. You know, the comment about do unto others as you would have them do unto you, as opposed to do unto others as they would like you to do to them, is in fact very profound. And it's a big argument in this country right now, because when we talk about what is popularly called politically correct, what politically correct means, if I am a person of a particular skin color or religion or sexual orientation, I get to choose the label that will be used to describe me. And if you respect that person, if you are going to do unto them as they would like them, as they would like to have you do unto them, you will respect them by using the labels that they want to place upon themselves. And this idea of attacking politically correct speech and actions in our universities and in other places is really an attempt to say your opinion and your values and what you stand for as an individual doesn't matter because I am right and I have the power, and so therefore I get to control what will happen. In other words, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so I will say that when I hear these politicians attacking political correctness, what they're really attacking is the respect and dignity of people that they dislike. And I really think we need to think about that when we start attacking political correctness and recognize that everyone has a right to their own personhood. They have a right to their own life. They have a right to their own respect and dignity. And we will never afford them the respect and dignity that they deserve as human beings on this planet as long as we hurl around words like political correctness in order to deny them that dignity.
I think we're running out of comments. Oh, come on up here.
I want to thank the speaker also for the clear way she described the concepts of the three trains of thoughts. It was very easily understood. I just have some thoughts. I hope it didn't sound too rambling, but my thoughts about different parts of this presentation. The title was about balance versus passion, and it reminds me of the movie that just came out recently, Touched by Fire. Has anyone seen that movie? It's about two young people that are poets, and they both have bipolar disorder, and they meet each other in a psychiatric facility, and their lives are totally out of control. They're just frantically writing, scribbling nonsense. This is their writing, and they believe this is passion. They do not want to live any other way except passionately, and they have all kinds of extremes. They drive off into a lake to avoid being caught by a highway patrol so that they can go out and live in the wilderness and live lives of passion, and they do not want any medication or any kind of treatment at all. And by the end of the movie, they have both become noted authors, and it was because they were able to. One person, another writer, spoke to them and said, if you get control of your emotions in your life, it does not take the passion away. In fact, you're more productive. So eventually, they did get themselves under control, and they didn't see a contradiction between passion and balance. It was just channeling it, how to channel it. I didn't see the presentation as opposed to our way of thinking, because balance is something that's important for everybody, not just in the Chinese. It's an important concept for everyone. And there's a psychiatrist, a neuropsychiatrist, Dr. Abraham Lowe, who wrote works in the early 1900s, and he had little statements that people use for coping techniques. And one of them was calm begets calm, temper begets temper. Calm yourself down and you'll get control. But if you start acting out on your temper, screaming and yelling like political issues, nothing gets settled. It just becomes a one-up battle, a vicious cycle. And another one was peace is our goal, and he was referring to peace within yourself and peace with your environment, and that does not mean turning a blind eye to injustices. It means how can you get things done peacefully, productively, without extreme temper. And another one, temper blocks insight. When you're in extreme emotion, extreme fear, or extreme anger, you don't have the insight to see how to deal with certain situations. And like Albert said, if you have a good night's sleep, if you calm yourself down, then click. It occurs to you how to handle situations. So I see that as a universal thing rather than something different from ours. And John, I think that there are people in our country doing a lot of good things that they don't make the news, though. It's the people that do all this ranting and raving that make the news. And so just my thought on that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Am I the last one standing? That's it? Well, I want to thank our speaker for being here today. I thought you did a terrific job. Got us all thinking different ways, which is part of part of her purpose here, I think, to get us thinking, so we know what to say, what to do. On the same token, right now today, John brought this up about our economics. Worldwide, we're in confusion. We have a situation where our exports we have a huge deficit in this country, and we owe everybody. Our financial system may collapse on us before we know it. It can happen. I remember the German Wehrmacht, that went under at one time. And we have a paper dollar that's not backed by anything right now. And we have paper bankers fighting everybody, and so that's part of our problem. The Chinese, for what it's worth, have built up their military, they've built up everything. We owe them a ton of money, and we don't seem to be dealing with it or doing anything about it. And what we have to do is recognize that in this worldwide situation we have every country, it's just like you brought up here tonight, every country should manufacture and produce what it needs.